Intro. Signposts are all around us. Do we have the eyes to see? This is one of my major mottos in life. I find it fascinating that we are like fish drowning in water. For some reason, mankind has had blinders over their eyes for thousands of years. We just don't see what is so obvious, the infinite that lies everywhere. This book hopefully will provide hints for you to start asking and writing questions. The first steps in discovering your true nature is asking the question, what is the purpose of my life? Most of us are merely running on the treadmill of life. We think that it is all there is. We never question why we are alive. Scientists say that the unconscious mind runs over 95% of the conscious mind. Yet, we think we are so conscious and aware. We see less than 1% of the light spectrum, yet we think we have a clear picture of life. Every day, we take thousands of breaths. With each breath, we're actually being born and dying in the next breath. We never know when we will take our last breath. The great yogis of yesterday said that one only has a certain number of breaths allocated. When that allocation is up, you die. There's no stopping the fact. Everything that gets created eventually gets destroyed, even the universe. Yet in the midst of it all, we are go along in our life oblivious to the miracle of life. It's sad in a way. Why are we so stubborn in our ways? Don't tell me what to do. Well, we're not. We're just suggesting that there's a jewel that lies inside of you. If you were about ready to walk off a cliff, would you get angry at the person who tells you, hey, you're about ready to walk off the cliff? Back off, turn around, and walk the other way. Mankind is walking off the cliff. We're just saying, stop, look, and listen. It's so simple as that. As you probably know, I love to do research. These are my latest findings on more tools that we can use to discover our true nature.
The jeweler and the thief. Well, let's continue with this incredible story. The dragons, when they first saw the youngsters entering the cave many moons ago, weren't interested in the slightest in training man. You see, man was one of their major troubles. There's even a dragon slayer profession in the British Isles. Yet, at that same time, they could see the potential in these youngsters. As a matter of fact, they were more evolved than them when they were young. Back then, the dragons didn't even have a glimmer of light. So, they had an internal discussion amongst themselves. Do you think we can train them? Do you think they can change? You see, even in China and Tibet, war ruled the land. Anger was the norm. Mind you, these youngsters had a combination of light and darkness. They could see both sides of the coin. So the dragons decided to train them. Now their training wasn't like today. Today, children in schools are bored. They are taught to use just memory. They are taught to remember facts. They are not taught to use your mind and think. The dragons are experts in this field. They are the master wizards of Hogwarts today. In fact, they are thousands of years ahead in development. Hogwarts teachers would be in nursery school. The dragons would have an advanced PhD studies in the universe. They were off the charts. The dragons had a unique style of teaching. You could say it was revolutionary today. They taught by using games, play, and fireside chats. The first game they taught was hide and seek. This was a very practical game. They had a series of talks about the universe. They were taught that the universe existed inside of them. Well, to be frank, that was completely over their heads. They couldn't even understand one word. So the dragons played a game of hide and seek. The dragons would hide. The youngsters closed their eyes and counted to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ready or not, here we come. They would open their eyes, and all the dragons were gone. The dragons had rules they couldn't teach the kids. All the kids were completely shocked when they opened their eyes. All the dragons disappeared. They all crashed in surprise. As you know, dragons are quite large. They weigh thousands of pounds. This game went on for around 6 months or so. Finally, at one fireside chat, the dragons told this practical story. Imagine 2 young men walking down the road. They were headed to a town 5 days from their current destination. One of their men was a jeweler. The other man was a thief. The thief knew this man had a very precious jewel that he was carrying. As I said, both of them were going to the same town. They decided to travel together. They had a long journey ahead of them. Hours passed. They were quite tired and exhausted. Fortunately, there was a simple inn ahead of them. They both decided to spend the night there and share a room together. Both of them decided to have dinner together. The jeweler went first, and a few minutes later, the thief joined them. While the jeweler was holding the table for them, the thief was looking all over for the precious jewel. He was quite dumbfounded. He was the greatest thief in the land. They had dinner and went to bed immediately. They weren't in the mood to drink the hell and party into the night. Well, guess what? This went on for several days. Finally, they reached their destination. By then, the thief was totally confused. He thought, this is going to be an easy steal. He said to the jeweler, I'm a thief. As a matter of fact, I'm a king of the thieves. I knew you were carrying a precious jewel. Every night, I knew you hid it. Every night, I knew you carried a precious jewel. I knew you hid the jewel inside of the room. Every night, I would search all over for it. I got quite frustrated when I couldn't find it. Where did you put it? I'm dying for an answer. The jeweler said, I knew you were a thief. I knew you wanted to steal the jewel. Every night I would hide it in a place you would never look. The thief said, and where is that? The jeweler said, under your own pillow. The thief knew he was outwitted and outsmarted. Well, the kids loved this story. They were well acquainted with thieves and jewelers. They went through their towns quite frequently. The dragon said, let's play a game of hide and seek again. This time, focus on your breath. Close your eyes. To their amazement, the dragons appeared inside of them. They couldn't believe it. How could all the dragons appear to them inside of their being? This was the starting point of their incredible adventures. Now, when they played hide and seek, they knew where to look. A single but necessary step took place. They knew it was both an inward and outward journey. The youngsters were thrilled. Each time they played the game, the youngsters knew where to look. They loved to play this game. All the first-time students had to go through the same baby steps that others went through. You see, this path is 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. You learn from your progress and your mistakes. Never give up.
Comparison: the power of now and the jeweler and the thief. Thank you for your question. I searched the web for information about the power of now by Eckhart Tolle and the jeweler and the thief. Here's what I found. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is a spiritual self-help book that teaches how to live in the present moment and free oneself from the ego and its negative effects on happiness. The book draws from various spiritual traditions such as Buddhism, mysticism, and Christianity, and offers practical exercises and methods to achieve inner peace and enlightenment. The Jeweler and the Thief is a story that the author uses to illustrate one of his main points in the book, that the most precious thing we have is always within us, but we often overlook it because we are distracted by our thoughts and desires. The story is about 2 men who travel together, one whom is a jeweler carrying a valuable gem, and the other is a thief who wants to steal it. The thief searches every night for the gem, but never finds it, because the jeweler hides it under his pillow. The moral of the story: that we are like the thief, who looks everywhere for happiness and fulfillment, except in the one place where it can be found, within ourselves. The common denominator between The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and The Jeweler and the Thief is that they both convey the same message, that we have everything we need to be happy and content in the present moment, and that we only need to be aware of it and access it. The story is a metaphor for the book, man's theme, that we can transcend our ego and its illusions by living in the now. I hope this helps you to understand the connection between the book and the story.
Planting the seeds. The dragons have a master plan. They know you need a solid foundation to build one. Baby steps are needed on this journey. At first, the youngsters had to learn how to focus inside, meditate. If they didn't learn that at even a simple level, the youngsters would pay all attention to the outside world. This is why they had to play hide and seek over and over again until it became a habit. It became second nature. They learned over time that God and the universe exists within. One another game the dragons used was peekaboo. The dragons had their own style to this game. Children would close their eyes and say, peekaboo, and the dragons would instantaneously reappear inside of them. The children would laugh so hard each time they did this. They never got tired of it. Even when they got older, they still got a big kick out of this game. This taught the child that the dragon world exists within. You are never alone. This helped the child in daily life. You see, their life was rough. Most of them never had the opportunity to go to school. Even at a young age, they had to work in the fields. It was tough and demanding. The dragons understood the laws of the universe. They understood that the kids learned that if you plant a seed in the ground, there's a process. A seed doesn't grow overnight. The crop must be tended to. You must pull your weeds. If you don't, the weeds will overtake your precious crop. You had to toil the soil and water it. It took a tremendous amount of energy. Well, the kids had no problem understanding those principles. The dragon then explained, you have an inner garden that must be attended to. You must pull your inner weeds of anger, war, greed, hate, and intolerance. You must learn how to pull the weeds of bullying. You see, this was a major problem in China and Tibet. It still is rampant in the West. The dragons were probably the best psychologists in the world. They understood the mind to such a great extent. They truly knew the ways to develop a healthy and positive mind. They understood that the universe is kind, the universe is patient, the universe is love and compassion, the universe is tolerant. You see, you are the universe, you just don't know it. The youngsters never heard of such a thing. They're only used to see war, bickering, and anger. Sure, at times they experience a little happiness, but they never knew that they could change their emotional state. They didn't have to be angry to bully other people around. The kids learn how to truly transform themselves. The dragons taught them how to hesitate before they speak. They taught them to be conscious of what they spoke. They were taught, if something is negative, don't say it. They understood it was placing more wood on the fire. The dragons knew about bullying. Remember, they were bullied all throughout their lives. Remember, that was one reason they left. There was this little innocent girl named Pima. Pima's name means lotus. She was like a lotus, very pure. Because she was pure and innocent, the boys loved to taunt her and bully her. She constantly had to endure this. The dragons were quite aware of her pain. Anyway, to make a long story short, they came up with a master plan. The next time the boys tried to bully her, the dragons would come to her rescue and roar. I mean, roar. It could be heard all over the valley. The bullies would run away in fear. Pima was so kind in nature, she would console the bullies and they would become best of friends. One by one, the bullies were transformed. They became students with the dragons and were transformed. It's kind of funny that modern day psychologists didn't embrace positive mental health until the 1980s. They only taught about the ailments of the mind. The East has been teaching and learning for thousands of years. There was even a rumor that Buddha learned from the dragons. He got his learning from the inner dimension. Buddha was considered the first psychologist of his time. He understood the mechanics of the mind, which is still in play today.
Planting the seeds commentary. The meaning behind these words is that they are part of a story about how dragons teach youngsters the secrets of the universe and the mind. The story is written in a poetic and imaginative way, using metaphors and symbols to convey the lessons that the dragons impart. Here are some of the possible meanings of the words. The dragons have a master plan. They know you need a solid foundation to build one. Baby steps are needed on the journey. This means that the dragons have a goal to enlighten the youngsters and help them grow spiritually. They know that this is not an easy or quick process, but requires patience and discipline. They start with simple and basic exercises to prepare the youngsters for more advanced teachings. At first, the youngsters had to learn how to focus inside and meditate. If they didn't learn that at even a simple level, the youngsters would pay all attention to the outside world. This means that the dragons teach the youngsters how to calm their minds and turn their attention inward, where they can discover their true nature and connect with the divine. If they don't learn this skill, they will be distracted by the external world and its illusions. This is why they had to play hide and seek over and over again until it became a habit. It became second nature. They learned over time that God and the universe exists within. This means that the dragons use a game of hide and seek to train the youngsters to look for the hidden presence of God and the universe within themselves and everywhere else. By playing this game repeatedly, they developed a habit of seeing the inner reality behind the outer appearances. One other game the dragons used to play was the game Peekaboo. The dragons had their style in this game. The child would close their eyes and say, Peekaboo, and the dragons would instantaneously be appearing inside of them. The children would laugh so hard each time they did this. They never got tired of this game. This taught the child that the dragon world exists within. You are never alone. This helped the child in daily life. This means that the dragons use another game of peekaboo to show the youngsters that they can access the dragon world anytime they want by closing their eyes and saying, Peekaboo. The dragons appeared inside of them, meaning that they share a bond of love and friendship within. The children enjoyed this game because it makes them happy and peaceful. This game teaches them that they are never alone because they have the dragons as their companions and guides in life. You see, their life was rough. Most of them never had the opportunity to go to school. Even at a young age, they had to work in the fields. It was tough and demanding. The dragons understood the laws of the universe. They understood that the kids learn that if you plant a seed in the ground, there is a process. A seed doesn't grow overnight. The crops must be tended to. You must pull your weeds. If you don't, the weeds will overtake your precious crop. You have to toil the soil and water it. It took a tremendous amount of energy. Well, the kids had no problem understanding those principles. The dragons then explaining, you have an inner garden that must be attended to. You must pull your inner weeds of anger, war, greed, hate, and intolerance. You must learn how to pull the weeds of bullying. You see, that was a major problem in China and Tibet. It is still in the West. The dragons were probably the best psychologists in the world. They understood the mind to such a great extent. They truly knew the way to develop a healthy and positive mind. They understood that the universe is kind, the universe is patient, The universe is love and compassion. The universe is tolerant. You see, you are the universe. You just don't know it. The youngsters never heard of such a thing. They only used to see war, bickering, and angry. Sure, at times they experienced a little happiness, but they never knew that they could change their emotional state. They didn't have to be angry and bully other people around. The kids learned how to transform themselves. The dragons taught them how to hesitate before they speak. They taught them to be conscious of what they spoke. They were taught if something is negative, don't say it. They understood it was placing more wood on the fire. The dragons knew about bullying. Remember, they would bully throughout their lives. Remember, that was the reason they left. There was this one innocent girl named Pima. Pima's name means lotus. She was a lotus very pure. Because she was pure and innocent, the boys loved to taunt her and bully her. She constantly had to endure this. The dragons were quite aware of her pain. Anyway, to make a long story short, they came up with a master plan. The next time the boys tried to bully her, the dragons would come to her rescue and roar. I mean roar. It could be heard all over the valleys. The bullies would run away in fear. Pima was so kind. She would counsel the bullies, and they would become best of friends. One by one, the bullies were transformed. They became students with dragons and were transformed. It was kind of funny that modern-day psychology didn't embrace positive mental health until the 1980s. They only taught about the elements of the mind. The East has been teaching and learning for thousands of years. There is even a rumor that Buddha learned from the dragons. He got his learning from the inner dimensions. Buddha was considered the first psychologist. This means that the words are describing how the dragons helped the youngsters cope with their harsh and difficult lives by teaching them how to cultivate their inner garden of peace, joy, and wisdom. The words also show how the dragons intervened to stop bullying and violence by using their power and presence to scare away the bullies and then heal their wounds with kindness and compassion. The words also suggest that the dragons are the source of ancient wisdom and spirituality, and they influence some of the greatest teachers of humanity, such as Buddha. The words are meant to inspire and uplift the reader by showing how the dragons transform the lives of the youngsters for the better.
Stop the noise in your head. As the children began to learn how to meditate, they saw how powerful the mind is. They never noticed that before. They asked the dragons how to stop the noise in my head. Of course, all the dragons laughed. They laugh because everyone goes through this. You see, the mind is the most difficult thing to control in the universe. The majority of man reacts to every situation. Man is reacting. The wise man learns to be proactive. They understand the basic law. It's my will alone. I set my mind in motion. Now, that's very easy to say, but hard to do. All people who learn how to meditate in the beginning have this problem. In the East, they call it monkey mind. The monkey goes from one branch to another. It can't be controlled. Well, when they first started to learn how to meditate, they clearly saw this from first-hand experience. The dragons told a wonderful story each time the subject was brought up. They told a story where a man saves a genie. Nobody knows exactly how this man saved him. Well, the genie told this man, "You can have as many wishes as you want." The man said, "Wow, that's incredible. I love that idea." The genie said, "Well, there's a catch." The man said, "What's that?" "You must always give one wish after another. If you don't, I will chop your head off with a sword." "Are you sure you want to continue with this?" The man hesitates for a moment and says, reluctant, "Sure." "Well," the genie said, "what's your first wish?" The man gives one wish after another. It seems like when one wish is granted, he has to give another. He didn't even have one opportunity to enjoy, even for a second, the previous wish. He was getting tired and couldn't even go to sleep. The genie was always harassing him and saying, "What's your next wish?" Well, fortunately, there was a wise man nearby. He went to the wise man and sincerely asked for help. This boon was turning into a curse. The wise man whispered into his ear, "Well," the genie demanded another wish, or he would chop off his head. The young man said, "Go to the forest and find a huge log. Your wish is my command." In a second he returned with a huge log. The genie said with a smile, "Give me a wish, I will chop off your head." As you can see, the genie wasn't particularly nice. So the young man told the genie to go up and down the pole. "When I need you, I will give you another command." The young man could relax and enjoy all the wishes he gave to the genie. The genie knew he was outsmarted by this wise man. The young boy enjoyed his life and helped others in the community. He eventually learned about the dragons and helped tremendously his fellow man. The dragons said that the genie is the mind. The mind wants to control you versus the other way around. By placing your mind on your breath, the genie will go up and down the log and set you free. Meditation is the key to bring awareness to your mind. The mind is either your friend or foe. Everyone in the universe has to learn how to control the mind.
Stop the noise in your head. Commentary. The meaning behind these words that they are part of a story about how the children learn to meditate with the help of the dragons. The story is written in a poetic and imaginative way, using metaphors and symbols to convey the lessons that the dragons impact. Here are some of the possible meanings of the words. As the child began to learn how to meditate, they saw how powerful the mind is. They never noticed that before. This means that the children discovered a new dimension of their existence, which is their inner world of thoughts and feelings. They realized that their mind has a great influence on their perception and experiences of reality, and they can use it for good or evil. They asked the dragons how to stop the noise in my head. Of course, all the dragons laughed. They laugh because everyone goes through this. You see, the mind is the most difficult thing to control in the universe. The majority of man reacts to every situation. Man is reactive. The wise man learns to be proactive. They understand the basic law. It's by will alone that I set my mind in motion. Now that's very easy to say, but hard to do. All people who learn how to meditate in the beginning have this problem. This means that the child face a common challenge that all meditators encounter, which is the constant chatter and distraction of their mind. They learn from the dragons that most people are slaves to the mind, and they react impulsively and emotionally to everything that happens to them. They also learn that they can choose to be different, and they can use their willpower to direct their minds towards a positive and constructive goal. However, they also learn that this is not an easy task and that requires practice and discipline. In the East, they call it the monkey mind. The monkey goes from one branch to another. It can't be controlled. Well, when they first started to learn how to meditate, they saw this from first-hand experience. This means that the children learned a term from Eastern philosophy which describes the restless and wandering nature of their mind. They compared their mind to a monkey which jumps from one thought to another without any order or purpose. They see for themselves how hard it is to tame their monkey mind. The dragons told a wonderful story each time the subject was brought up. They told a story where a man saves a genie. Nobody knows exactly how this man saved him. Well, the genie told this man, "You can have as many wishes as you want." The man said, "Wow, that's incredible. I love that idea." The genie said, "Well, there's a catch." The man said, "Ooh, what's that?" "You must always give one wish after another. If you don't, I will chop your head off with my sword." "Are you sure you want to continue with this?" The man hesitates for a moment and says reluctantly, "Sure." Well, the genie said, "What's your first wish?" The man gives one wish after another. It seems like when one wish is granted, he has to give another. He didn't have one opportunity to enjoy it, even for a second, the previous wish. He was getting tired and couldn't even go to sleep. The genie was always harassing him and saying, "What's your next wish?" Well, fortunately, there was a wise man nearby. He went to the wise man and sincerely asked for help. The boon was turning into a curse. The wise man whispered into his ear, "Well, the genie demanded another wish or he would chop off his head." The young man said, "Go to the forest and find a huge log. Your wish is my command." In a second he returns with a huge log. The genie said with a smile, "Give me a wish or I will chop off your head." As you can see, the genie wasn't particularly nice. Well, the young man told the genie to go up and down the pole. "When I need you, I will give you another command." The young man could relax and enjoy all the wishes he gave to this genie. The genie knew he was outsmarted by the wise man. The young boy enjoyed his life and helped others in the community. He eventually learned about the dragons and helped tremendously his fellow man. This means that the dragons used the story to illustrate how their mind can be both a blessing and a curse, depending on how they use it. The story is about a man who saves a genie who grants him unlimited wishes, but with a catch. He has to keep making wishes or else he will die. The man soon realizes this is not as good as it sounds because he becomes exhausted and unhappy by constantly having to think of new wishes without being able to enjoy what he already has. He seeks help from a wise man. He turns him how to trick the genie into doing something harmless and repetitive so that he can have some peace and freedom from his endless desires. The story teaches the children that the mind can be like a genie who can grant them anything they want, but can also make them miserable and restless if they don't control it. The story also teaches them that they can use their mind wisely by giving it a simple and focused task, such as following the breath, which can calm it.
The frog in the well. You are the universe. You just don't know it. This is the central theme of the dragons. They reached a growth of awareness where they became the sun, moon, and stars, and were walking around in dragon bodies. They realized they were eternal. They were beyond time and space. The dragons also knew that humans had the same capability. They were curious about that. The dragons knew that man came from the stars. They were stardust. Yet the village around them, and Tibet and China at that time, had no idea of who they truly are. The dragons were once in the same state of awareness as the humans. They were angry, hateful, worried, and full of greed. Yet over time, they realized their potential. They needed a story that could reflect how large they felt, yet how small in reality they lived in. So, there goes the story. Once upon a time, a frog lived in a well. This frog thought he was a know-it-all. This frog thought the water in my well is the largest in the world. This was in fact quite a large well. The villagers used it for the community. Anyway, this frog bragged a lot and told all the people who were strangers to the well how vast the water is in the well. One day, a stranger came who lived near the ocean. The frog came up to the stranger and said, "The water in my well is far grander than any water in the well in the world." The stranger said, "Well, according to my experience, the water in your well is probably one of the smallest I've ever seen." Well, a fighting sea infused with the water worms. It was going out of control. Both sides were putting wood on the fire. Finally, they both calmed down. All the villagers came and wondered what was going on. It was quite the scene. Well, the villagers and frogs said to the man, "Can you prove it? Can you show us a place where water is larger than our well?" So to make a long story short, a small group of villagers and the frog traveled to the ocean. They couldn't believe what they saw. An endless body of water everywhere. They were dumbfounded. Never in their world did they see such a precious sight. The stranger laughed and said, "Now, this is a large body of water." The villagers and frogs couldn't agree more. Their well wasn't even a drop of water compared to the ocean. The dragons told this story to the youngsters. They reminded the kids of playing hide and seek and peekaboo. The dragons would appear to them inside. Well, the dragon said, "This is the frog in the well. This is the starting point in your incredible journey of life. Inside of you lies the infinite ocean of love. You have the potential to tap into this. In fact, you are this ocean. This is your true nature. You should see how wide open were the eyes opened from the children. They were completely mesmerized by this story. They were just some mumble jumble words. The dragons were talking about their own personal experience. They were telling the kids that you could ultimately have the same experience. It's a moment by moment conscious journey. Baby steps are taken along the way.
Secrets of the universe and their true nature. The story is written in a poetic and imaginative way, using metaphors and symbols to convey the lessons that the dragons impart. Here are some of the possible meanings of the words. You are the universe. You just don't know it. This is the central theme of the dragons. They reached their growth awareness where they became the sun, moons, and stars, and were walking around in dragon bodies. They realized they were eternal. They were beyond time and space. This means that the dragons have achieved a state of enlightenment where they recognize their oneness with everything that exists and their transcendence of the limitations of forms and time. They had realized their true identity as a universe itself, which is infinite and eternal. The dragons also knew that humans had the same capability. They were curious about that. The dragons knew that man came from the stars. They were stardust. Yet the villages around them in China and Tibet at that time had no idea who they truly are. This means that the dragons have compassion and curiosity for humans who have the same potentials as them, but are unaware of it. The dragons knew that humans are also part of the universe, and they have a divine origin and destiny. However, the dragons are ignorant of their true nature. However, humans are ignorant of their true nature and live in a state of confusion and suffering. The dragons were once in the same state of awareness as the humans. They were angry, hateful, worried, and full of greed. Yet over time, they realized their potential. This means that the dragons have empathy and understanding for humans because they have gone through a similar process of evolution and transformation. The dragons were not always enlightened, but they seemed to be like humans who were driven by negative emotions and desires. However, they managed to overcome their lower nature and awaken to their higher nature. They needed a story that would reflect how large they felt, yet how small in reality they live in. So here goes the story. Once upon a time, a frog lived in a well. This frog thought he was a know-it-all. This frog thought, the water in my well is the largest in the world. This was in fact quite a large well. The villagers used it for their community. However, the frog bragged a lot and told all the people who were strangers to the well how vast the water is in the well. One day a stranger came who lived near the ocean. The frog came up to the stranger and said, the water in my well is far grander than my water in the well. The stranger said, well, according to my experience, the water in your well is probably one of the smallest I have ever seen. Well, a fight ensued with the war of words. It was going out of control. Both sides were putting wood on the fire. Finally, they both calmed down. All the villagers came and wondered what was going on. It was quite the scene. Well, the villagers and frogs said to the man, can you prove it? Can you show us a place where water is larger than our well? So to make a long story short, a small group of villagers and the frog traveled to the ocean. They couldn't believe what they saw. An endless body of water is everywhere. They were dumbfounded. Never in their mind did they see such a precious sight. The stranger laughed and said, "Now, this is a large body of water." The villagers and Frog couldn't agree more. Their well wasn't even a drop of water compared to the ocean. This meant that the dragons used the story to illustrate how their perspective has changed from being narrow and limited to being broad and expansive. The story is about a frog who lives in a well and thinks that his well is the biggest thing in the world. He argues with a stranger who lives near the ocean, who tells him that his well is very small compared to other bodies of water. The frog challenges him to prove it, so they go to the ocean together. The frog is amazed and humbled by how vast and magnificent the ocean is, and realizes how small his well is. The story teaches the children how to be humble and open-minded, and how to expand their horizons by exploring new places and experiences. The story also shows them how relative their perception of reality is, depending on their point of view and level of awareness. The story also encouraged them to seek out new sources of knowledge and wisdom, such as the ocean or the dragons.
When I was young, I heard a story about three blind men touching an elephant. Each man touched a different part of the elephant. One touched the elephant's ear, another touched his feet, while the last touched the tusk. They began to discuss their experience and a huge fight began. I'm right and you're wrong. I know all the answers. You're a fool to believe in that. What a child you are. Yet they all had their own individual experience. It was a piece of the puzzle. Not the puzzle itself, but a piece. Are we like the blind man touching the elephant? My religion is better than your religion. I'm going to heaven while you're going to hell. I'm going to declare war on you. I'm going to convert you. Religion has a piece of the puzzle. It is not the puzzle itself. Each religion is different and unique. The essence is the same. Which part of the elephant did you touch? Maybe it's about time to be open to something new. Your enemy is talking about the same thing you are. He just has a different piece, a different point of view. In the end, the essence is the same.
Three Blind Men and the Elephant Commentary. The meaning behind this poem that there is a critique of religion, intolerance, and dogmatism. The poem uses the metaphor of the blind man and the elephant, which is an ancient parable that illustrates the limits of human perception and the importance of respecting different perspectives. The poem suggests that each religion has a piece of the truth, but not the whole truth, and the essence of all religions is the same. The poem also implies that religious conflicts are caused by ignorance and arrogance, and that peace can only be achieved by being open to something new and recognizing the common ground among different faiths. The poem challenges the reader to question their own beliefs and assumptions and to seek a deeper understanding of themselves and others. The poem also expresses a hope for a more harmonious and compassionate world. Comparison of the Power and Now by Eckhart Tolle and Fletcher Soul Traveler. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and Fletcher Soul Traveler on YouTube are both sources of spiritual guidance and inspiration. They share some common themes such as the importance of living in the present moment and being aware of one's true self beyond the mind and the ego, the connection between all beings and the universe, and the potential to access the inner wisdom and power that lies within. The use of meditation, mindfulness, and other practice to cultivate a state of peace, presence, and joy. The exploration of various spiritual traditions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and mysticism, and their insight into the nature of reality and consciousness. However, they also have some differences, such as The Power of Now is a book that presents a systematic and structured approach to spiritual enlightenment, while Fletcher Soul Traveler is a YouTube channel that offers a variety of content such as poems, stories, books, talks, and music that reflect the personal journey and expression of the creator. The Power of Now focuses on the physiological aspects of spirituality, such as how to overcome the pain body, the egoic mind, and the negative emotions that arise from identification with the past and the future. Fletcher's Soul Traveler focuses more on the creative aspects of spirituality, such as how to use imagination, intuition, and art to manifest one's dreams and visions. The Power of Now is based on the author's own experiences of a profound spiritual awakening that occurred when he was 29 years old. Fletcher's Soul Traveler is based on the creator's ongoing exploration of various spiritual paths and teachings that he has encountered throughout his life. In summary, both The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and Fletcher's Soul Traveler on YouTube are valuable resources for anyone who is interested in spirituality and personal growth. They give different perspectives and methods that can complement each other and help one discover the power of now. The Power of Now. The Power of Now is a book by Eckhart Tolle that teaches how to live in the present moment and free oneself from illusions of the mind and the ego. It is a commentary on the essence of spirituality and the path to enlightenment. Here are some of the main points of the book. The present moment is only reality and the only thing that matters. The past and the future are mental constructs that create suffering and prevent us from experiencing the joy and peace of our true nature. The mind and the ego are not who we are. They are tools that we use to navigate the world, but they often take over our lives and create a false sense of identity and separation from others and from the source of life. The pain body is the collective energy field of negative emotions that feeds on our thoughts and reactions. It is activated by situations that trigger our old wounds and traumas, and it causes us to act out of fear, anger, or guilt. To awaken to our true self, we need to become aware of our thoughts and emotions and observe them without judgment or identification. We need to create a space of consciousness between us and our mind-made self and realize that we are not our thoughts or emotions, but the awareness that witnesses them. To live in the present moment, we need to focus our intention what is happening in the here and now, without projecting into the future or dwelling on the past. We need to accept what is without resisting or trying to change it. We need to surrender to the flow of life and trust that everything happens for a reason and for our highest good. To connect with our true self, we need to access the inner dimensions of stillness and silence that lies within us. We can do this by practicing meditation, mindfulness, breathing, or any other technique that help us quiet our mind and tune into our inner being. We can also use nature, music, art, or any other form of beauty that resonates with us as portals to enter the state of presence. To experience the oneness of all life, we need to transcend our sense of separation and realize that we are not isolated entities, but expressions of a universal intelligence that pervades everything. We need to recognize ourselves in others and others in ourselves and feel the love that binds us together. We need to recognize that we are not here to compete or dominate, but to cooperate and create. These are some of the key passages of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It is a book that can transform your life if you apply its teachings and practices its exercises. It can help you discover who you really are beyond your mind-made self and live in harmony with yourself, with others, and the universe. Pain body. The Power of Now focuses more on the physiological aspects of spirituality, such as how to overcome the pain body, the egoic mind, and the negative emotions that arise from identification with the past and the future. This statement is a summary of the main theme of a book called The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment by Eckhart Tolle. The book is a self-help guide that teaches readers how to live in the present moment and achieve a state of consciousness that transcends the ordinary mind. According to Tolle, most people are trapped in their pain body, which is a collection of negative emotions and memories that have accumulated over time and influenced their thoughts and behaviors. The pain body feeds on more pain and suffering and prevents people from experiencing joy and peace. Tolle also claims that most people are dominated by the egoic mind, which is a false sense of self that is based on identification with one's thoughts, feelings, roles, possessions, and achievement. The egoic mind creates a sense of separation and conflict with oneself and others, and constantly seeks validation and gratification from external sources. Tolle argues that most people are unaware of the present moment, which is the only reality that exists. Instead, they are preoccupied with the past and the future, which are mental constructs that have no substance or power. By dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, people miss out on the opportunities and possibilities that are available in the now. Tolle suggests that the way to overcome the pain body, the egoic mind, and the negative emotions that arise from identification with the past and the future is to practice mindfulness and awareness. By observing one's thoughts and emotions without judgment or attachment, one can detach oneself from them and recognize them as illusions. By focusing one's attention on the present moment, one can connect with one's true self and essence, which is pure consciousness and awareness. By doing so, Tolle claims that one can achieve a state of spiritual enlightenment, which is a state of being that transcends the ordinary mind and its limitations. In this state, one can experience inner peace, joy, love, creativity, and freedom. One can also realize one's connections and harmony with all there is. Body concept from Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. The pain body is Tolle's term for the accumulation of old emotional pain and trauma that many people carry. He believes that the pain body is an energy field that can take over our thoughts and emotions, leading us to dwell on past pains, be weighted down by negativity and identity with being a victim. Tolle says we feed the pain body when we completely identify with negative thoughts and emotions like anger, resentment, sadness, etc. The pain body gives energy and power when we allow it to control our thinking. It tries to draw more negative experience and thoughts in order to grow. To reduce the power of the pain body, Tolle suggests living in the present moment as much as possible. Some of his suggestions include practice being the observer of your thoughts. Don't over-identify with them. See them as passing clouds. When you notice yourself dwelling on the thoughts of the past pain, bring your focus gently back to the present. Focus on your breathing or sensing into the aliveness of your hands. Don't believe every thought you have. Ask yourself, is this thought true in this moment? Release judgments about your negative thoughts. Don't battle with them. Just practice returning your focus to the now. Deal with your negative emotions as they arise. Don't let them build up inside. Feel them fully. Let them pass through you. Then refocus on the present. Don't seek out negativity in others. Be compassionate, not critical. Raise your vibratory frequency by focusing on joy, gratitude, creativity, etc. The basic premise is that by staying present, we reduce the pain body's ability to control our thinking and feed on negative energy. We experience more peace when we don't over-identify with the body's ego. Pain. The ego is your sense of self or your identity that is shaped by your thoughts, beliefs, memories, emotions, and experiences. The ego is not who you really are, but a mental construct that you identify with. According to Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher and author, the ego is a source of suffering and conflict in your life. The ego is always dissatisfied with the present moment and seeks to escape it by dwelling on the past or projecting into the future. The ego is always constantly comparing itself to others and judging them as better or worse than itself. The ego is insecure and fearful and tries to protect itself by creating problems and drama. To transcend the ego and live in the present moment, Eckhart Tolle suggests that you practice being aware of your thoughts and feelings without identifying with them or reacting to them. You can observe your ego as a witness without giving it any power or attention. You can also focus on your breath, your body sensations, or the sounds and signals around you to anchor yourself in the now. By being present, you can connect with your true essence, which is beyond the ego. Your true essence is pure consciousness, peace, and joy. I hope this helps you understand the concept of the ego and how to overcome it. Time and eternity meet, where you can experience the fullness of life. The present moment is not a concept, but a direct perception of what is happening right now, without any interference from your mind. To live in the present moment, you need to become aware of your thoughts and emotions and realize they are not who you are. They are just mental phenomena that come and go. but you are the awareness that observes them. You can practice by being present, by paying attention to your breath, your body sensations, or the sounds or sights around you. You can also use a simpler mantra such as I am here now to remind yourself to stay in the now. To enjoy the present moment, you need to accept it as it is without judging it or resisting it. You need to let go of your expectations, preferences, and attachments and embrace the aliveness and beauty of the moment. You need to realize that the present moment is a gift and you have everything you need within yourself to be happy. You can also express gratitude for the present moment and appreciate the small things that make life wonderful. Mindfulness is the state of being of your present experience without being distracted by your thoughts, emotions, or judgments. Mindfulness is a way of living in harmony with yourself and the world by accepting the reality of the now. Mindfulness is also a practice that can help you cultivate this state of awareness and achieve a different level of consciousness and enlightenment. To practice mindfulness, you can follow these steps. Find a comfortable and quiet place to sit or lie down. You can also practice mindfulness while walking, eating, or doing any other activity as long as you are fully present and attentive to what you are doing. Close your eyes or keep them slightly open if you prefer. Breathe naturally and deeply and focus on your breath as it flows in and out your body. Notice the sensations in your nostrils, chest, and abdomen. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back to your breath. Expand your awareness to your whole body and feel the energy and aliveness that fills every cell. Scan your body from head to toe and notice any areas of tension, pain, or discomfort. Breathe into those areas and release any resistance or negativity. Feel the peace and relaxation that spreads throughout your body. Move your attention to your thoughts and emotions and observe them as they arise and pass away in your mind. Don't judge them, analyze them, or identify with them. Just watch them as they were clouds in the sky or waves in the ocean. See them as separate from who you are and let them go. Shift your focus to the space of awareness that surrounds and contains your thoughts and emotions. This is your true nature, your essence, your being. This is the unconditional consciousness that Eckhart Tolle calls the now. This is the source of all creativity, intelligence, and wisdom. This is where you can access the spiritual dimensions within you. Rest in this state of presence and enjoy the silence, stillness, and peace that fills you. You are not a person, you are presence. You are not a separate entity, you are one with everything that exists. You are not a problem to be solved, you are a mystery to be lived. You are not a seeker of enlightenment, you are enlightenment itself. When you are ready, gently open your eyes and return to your normal activities. But don't lose touch with the state of awareness. Carry it with you throughout the day and practice mindfulness whenever you can. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you will experience its benefits in your life. Some of the benefits for mindfulness are reduce stress, anxiety, and depression, improve physical health and well-being, enhance mental clarity and focus, increase happiness and joy, greater compassion and empathy, higher self-esteem and confidence, deeper connection with yourself and others, more creativity and inspiration, spiritual awakening and enlightenment. I hope this helps you understand what mindfulness is, how to practice it, and spiritual enlightenment for you. Spiritual enlightenment is a state of awareness and consciousness that transcends the ego and the mind and connects with the true essence of being. It is a state of peace, joy, and freedom that is beyond the limitations of time, space, and form. Spiritual enlightenment is not a goal to be achieved, but is a reality to be realized. To experience spiritual enlightenment, you need to practice being present in the now and observe your thoughts and emotions without identifying with them or reacting to them. You need to accept the reality of the moment as it is, without judging it or resisting it. You need to let go of your attachments, expectations, and preferences, and embrace the aliveness and beauty of the moment. You need to realize that you are not a separate entity, but one with everything that exists. You need to connect with the source of all creativity, intelligence, and wisdoms within you. Some of the benefits of spiritual enlightenment are reduce stress, anxiety, and depression, improve physical health and well-being, enhance mental clarity and focus, increase happiness and joy, greater compassion and empathy, higher self-esteem and confidence, deeper connection with yourself and others, more creativity and inspiration, spiritual awakening, surrender, and according to Eckhart Tolle, surrender is the key to spiritual growth and living in the present moment. Surrendering means to stop resisting or fighting the flow of life and to accept the reality of the now as it is. Surrender does not mean to passively tolerate or endure a situation, but to embrace it with awareness and openness. Surrender allows one to transcend the ego mind and its judgments and to connect with the inner dimension of stillness and silence that is the source of peace and joy. Surrendering also enables one to align with the universal intelligence that pervades everything and to experience the oneness of all life and the true nature of ourselves and others. Forgiveness is the recognition that we are not separate from the source of life and that we are all expressions of the same consciousness. Forgiveness is the letting go of the past and the identification with the ego, which is the false sense of self that causes suffering. Forgiveness is the acceptance of what is and the alignment with the present moment, which is the only reality. Forgiveness is freeing because it liberates us from the bondage of resentment, guilt, and fear, and allows us to experience the joy and peace of our true nature. The correlation between Eckhart Tolle and the Vedas. Eckhart Tolle is a contemporary spiritual teacher who draws inspiration from various sources, including the Vedas, which are ancient scriptures of Hinduism. The Vedas contain the teaching of the sages and seers, who realized the ultimate truth of existence through meditation and self-inquiry. Eckhart Tolle's main message is to awaken to the present moment, which he calls the now, and to transcend the egoic mind, which he calls the pain body. He teaches that the now is the gateway to the eternal, and the pain body is the source of all suffering and conflict. He also emphasizes the importance of stillness, silence, and awareness as the keys to liberation. The correlation between Eckhart Tolle and the Vedas can be seen in several aspects, such as the concept of Brahman. The Vedas describe Brahman as the supreme reality, the source of all creation, and the essence of all beings. Brahman is beyond name and form, beyond time and space, and beyond duality and causality. Brahman is pure consciousness, bliss, and existence. Eckhart Tolle uses different names to point to the same reality, such as being, presence, consciousness, or awareness. He says that we are not separate from Brahman or being, but we have forgotten our true nature due to our identification with the mind and the world. The concept of Maya. The Vedas explain that Maya is the power of illusion that veils Brahman from our perspective. Maya creates the appearance of multiplicity and diversity in the world, but is not ultimately real. Maya is composed of three qualities or gunas: sattva, purity; raja, activity; and tamas, inertia. These qualities influence our mind, body, and actions. Eckhart Tolle calls Maya the dream of form, or the form of separation. He says that we are trapped in Maya when we believe that we are our thoughts, emotions, sensations, or experiences. He also says that we can transcend Maya by becoming aware of our true nature as pure awareness. The concept of Atman. The Vedas assert that Atman is the individual cell or self that is identical with Brahman. Atman is not affected by birth and death, pleasure and pain, or any other change or condition. Atman is eternal, unchanging, and blissful. Eckhart Tolle does not use the word Atman, but it refers to it as the essence or true self. He says we can realize our Atman by disidentifying from our ego or false self, which is a collection of memories, beliefs, opinions, and judgments. He also says that we can connect with our Atman by being present in the now, which is our known natural state of being. The concept of karma. The Vedas define karma as the law of cause and effect that governs all actions and their consequences. Karma determines our destiny in this life and beyond. Karma is based on our intentions, thoughts, words, and deeds. Karma can be positive or negative, depending on whether they are in a harmony or disharmony with Dharma or cosmic order. Eckhart Tolle does not use the term karma, but he acknowledges its existence as a universal principle. He says we can free ourselves from karma by becoming conscious of our actions and their impact on ourselves and others. He also says we can dissolve karma by forgiving ourselves and others for any mistakes or wrongdoings. Stillness Speaks is a book by Eckhart Tolle, a contemporary spiritual teacher and author of The Power of Now and A New Earth. This book is a collection of short passages that aims to inspire and guide the reader to access the state of presence, which is the essence of Tolle's teachings. The book is divided into 10 chapters, each focusing on a different aspect of presence, such as silence, nature, relationships, death, and suffering. The book is written in a simple and direct style, with each passage being concise and complete in itself. The book invites the reader to pause and reflect on the words and to experience the stillness that lies behind them. This book is based on the premises that stillness is our true nature and that we can access it by becoming aware of our inner space or awareness, which is the source of all perception and thought. Totally suggests that we can cultivate this awareness by practicing mindfulness, which is the art of being fully present in the moment without judgment or interpretation. He also suggests that we can use various pointers or portals to enter the state of presence, such as silence, nature, breath, body, and space. He explains that these pointers are not the goals in themselves, but only a means to an end, the realization of who we truly are. This book is not to be read as the conventional book, but rather as a meditation or contemplation. Dolly encourages the reader to read the passages slowly and attentively, and to feel the essence of the words rather than analyze them intellectually. He also advises the reader to read only one passage at a time and to allow a gap between each passage for stillness to emerge. He says the book is not a teaching, but a transmission of stillness, and the reader can receive this transmission by being open and receptive. This book is a valuable research for anyone who wants to deepen their spiritual practice and awaken to their true identity. It offers practical guidance and inspiration for living in the now, which is the only reality. It offers insights and comfort for dealing with various challenges and difficulties in life, such as pain, loss, fear, anger, and ego. This book is a reminder that stillness speaks louder than words, and it is always available within us if we are willing to listen. You lose touch with yourself. When you lose touch with yourself, you lose yourself in the world. The stream of thinking has enormous momentum that can easily drag you along with it. Every thought pretends that it matters so much. It wants to draw your attention in completely. Here's a new spiritual practice for you. Don't take your thoughts too seriously. The egoic self is always engaged in seeking, which means it is always dissatisfied. The most obvious form of seeking is material acquisition. The most subtle forms of seeking are spiritual or psychological, seeking to improve oneself, to become more complete, more enlightened. The now is inseparable from who you are at the deepest level. It is the prerequisite of being. As you listen to the teachings, a shift occurs within you. This will be more apparent later on when we go more deeply into the nature of the now. Who you think you are is also intimately connected with how you see yourself treated by others. Many people complain that others do not treat them well enough. I do not get any respect, attention, recognition, acknowledgement, they say. I'm being taken for granted. When people are kind, they suspect hidden motives. Others want to manipulate me. take advantage of me. Nobody loves me. Who do they think they are? Is this? I am a needy me whose needs are not being met. The basic misperception of who they are creates dysfunction in all their relationships. Acceptance means, for now, this is what this situation, this moment requires me to do, and I do it willingly. When you perceive nature only through the mind, through thinking, you cannot sense its aliveness, its beginningness. You see the form only, or are unaware of the life within the form, the sacred mystery. Thought reduces nature to a commodity can be used in the pursuit of profit or knowledge or some other utilitarian purpose. The ancient forest becomes timber. The bird becomes a research project. The mountain something to be mined or conquered. If your relationship is not working, whenever you interact with your partner, there will be unhappiness on one or both sides. It may be subtle or it may be pronounced. There are two ways of dealing with this situation. You can make it into a problem or you can use it for enlightenment. Death is the stripping away of all that is not you. The secret of life is to die before you die and find that there is no death. Suffering has a noble purpose, the evolution of consciousness and the burning up of the ego. You don't have a life. You are life. Whenever you interact with people, don't be there primarily as a function or as a role, but as a field of consciousness presence. You can only lose something that you have, but you cannot lose something that you are. The moment you accept what troubles you
has introduced millions
you've
of
been
people
given
to
the
joy
door
and freedom
will
of
open.
living life in the present moment. He has written several books on the subject, including The Power of Now and A New Earth. According to Tolle, believes that meditation is not something that should be approached as a chore or a means to an end. Rather, it is something that you live. He teaches that the aim of meditation is to eventually become your normal state of consciousness. Tolle has created several guided meditations that are designed to help people break attachment to the stream of thought, ease suffering, discern their formless self, and embody presence in every single moment. The Essential Meditation Collection is one such example. It includes 7.5 hours of rare talks and Eckhart's best meditation that guides you in discovering the joyous simplicity of present moment mindfulness. Why stillness is much more than quieting the unruly mind, and how to rise above the thinking mind rather than sinking below it, are quite profound. Eckhart Tolle speaks about the importance of acceptance and surrender, helping you to get to a place where you embrace the present moment as it is, not because you no longer care about yourself or your life, but because you realize that this moment is all that there is. The Taoist philosophy also emphasizes the importance of living in the present moment and accepting things as they are. The concept of Wu Wei, which means non-action or effortless action, is central to Taoist thought and encourages us to let go of our desire to control everything and instead allow things to unfold naturally. It is a rare skill that requires one to be fully present and attentive to the words and the space between the words of the speaker. True listening is not just hearing, but also understanding and feeling what the speaker is communicating. True listening creates a space of no thinking, where the listener and the speaker can connect on a deeper level. True listening is a form of meditation that can help one to access the power of now and experience inner peace. Set ego boundaries. Eckhart Tolle is a spiritual teacher and author of several books, such as The Power of Now and A New Earth. He teaches that the ego is the source of most human suffering and that we can transcend it by being present in the moment. According to Tolle, the ego is a part of our mind that creates a false sense of self based on our thoughts, emotions, memories, and attachments. The ego is always seeking validation, recognition, and superiority from others and from the world. It is also constantly in conflict with reality, resisting what is and creating problems where there are none. One of the ways to overcome the ego is to set boundaries for it. Boundaries are not walls that separate us from others, but rather guidelines that help us respect ourselves and others. Boundaries allow us to say no to what is not aligned with our true self and purpose, and to say yes to what it is. Boundaries also help us to recognize and accept our limitations and to ask for help when we need it. Boundaries are not rigid or fixed, but rather flexible and adaptable to different situations and people. Some examples of boundaries that can help us deal with the ego are being honest with ourselves and others and not pretending to be someone we are not. Taking responsibility for our own feelings and actions and not bringing others or ourselves for what happens, for not blaming others or ourselves for what happens. Expressing our needs and preferences clearly and respectfully and not expecting others to read our mind or fulfill our desires. Listen to our intuition and inner guidance and not letting fear or doubt stop us from following the path. Practicing gratitude and appreciation for what we have and not comparing ourselves to others or complaining about what we lack. Being compassionate and forgiving toward ourselves and others and not holding on to resentment or guilt. Respecting our own time and energy and not overcommitting or exhausting ourselves. Respecting other people's time and energy and not imposing or intruding on them. Giving ourselves space and time to be alone and not depending on others for our happiness or security. Giving others space and time to be themselves and not trying to change or control them. By setting boundaries for our ego, we can create more harmony and peace in our life. We can also connect more deeply with our true self, which is beyond the ego. Our true self is the source of joy, love, creativity, and wisdom. It is always present in the now, waiting for us to discover it. Forms of suffering. Eckhart Tolle is a spiritual teacher and author who teaches that we can free ourselves from suffering by being present in the now and transcending the ego. The ego is part of our mind that creates a false sense of self based on our thoughts, emotions, memories, and attachments. The ego is always seeking validation, recognition, and superiority from others and from the world. It is also constantly in conflict with reality, resisting what is and creating problems where there are none. According to Tolle, one of the ways to learn to see all forms of subtle suffering is to observe our own mind and emotions without judgment or identification. He calls this practice the watcher or the witness. By becoming aware of the egoic patterns of thinking and feeling, we can disidentify them from them and create a space of inner stillness and peace. We then can recognize that we are not our thoughts or emotions, but the consciousness that is aware of them. Another way to learn to see all forms of subtle suffering is to accept the present moment as it is, without resistance or attachment. Tolle says that most of our suffering comes from wanting things to be different from how they are, or from wanting more or less of something. He calls this the pain body, which is accumulated energy of past emotional pain that lives in our body-mind. The pain body feeds on negative thoughts and emotions and can be triggered by anything that reminds us of our past wounds or fears. Tolle suggests that we can dissolve the pain body by bringing our attention to the present moment and by feeling the emotion fully without adding any mental story to it. He says that by doing this, we allow the emotion to be transmuted into presence, which is our true nature. Presence is the state of being fully awake and aware in the now, without being distracted by the past or the future. Presence is also the source of joy, love, creativity, and wisdom. I hope this helps you understand some of Tolle's teachings on how to learn to see all forms of subtle suffering. Eckhart Tolle is a spiritual teacher and author who teaches that we can free ourselves from suffering by being present in the now and transcending the ego. The ego is part of our mind that creates a false sense of self based on our thoughts, emotions, memories, and attachments. The ego is always seeking validation, recognition, and superiority from others and from the world. It is also constantly in conflict with reality, resisting what is and creating problems where there are none. According to Tolle, one of the ways to learn to see all forms of subtle suffering is to observe our own mind and emotions without judgment or identification. He calls this practice the watcher or the witness. By becoming aware of the egoic patterns of thinking and feeling, we can disidentify them from them and create a space of inner stillness and peace. We then can recognize that we are not our thoughts or emotions, but the consciousness that is aware of them. Another way to learn to see all forms of subtle suffering is to accept the present moment as it is, without resistance or attachment. Tolle says that most of our suffering comes from wanting things to be different from how they are, or from wanting more or less of something. He calls this the pain body, which is accumulated energy of past emotional pain that lives in our body mind. The pain body feeds on negative thoughts and emotions and can be triggered by anything that reminds us of our past wounds or fears. Tolle suggests that we can dissolve the pain body by bringing our attention to the present moment and by feeling the emotion fully without adding any mental story to it. He says that by doing this, we allow the emotion to be transmuted into presence, which is our true nature. Presence is the state of being fully awake and aware in the now, without being distracted by the past or the future. Presence is also the source of joy, love, creativity, and wisdom. I hope this helps you understand some of Tolle's teachings on how to learn to see all forms of
Awareness
subtle
replacing thinking. It seems that you're interested in the concept of awareness replacing thinking as taught by Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual teacher and author. This is a profound idea that can help you become more present, peaceful, and free from the tyranny of the mind. Here are some points that might help you understand this concept better. According to Eckhart Tolle, thinking is a useful tool, but it can also become a hindrance when it dominates our lives and prevents us from experiencing the reality of the present moment. He says that most of us are trapped in a state of unconscious identification with our thoughts and emotions, which creates a false sense of self and creates suffering. To break free from this state, Eckhart Tolle suggests that we need to shift our attention from thinking to awareness, which is the essence of who we are. Awareness is the space in which thoughts and emotions arise and subside, but it is not affected by them. Awareness is also the source of our true intelligence, creativity, and intuition. Eckhart Tolle teaches that we can access awareness by becoming more conscious of our inner body, our breathing, our senses, and the gaps between thoughts. He also recommends practicing meditation and mindfulness as ways to cultivate awareness and detach ourselves from thinking. When we live from awareness, we're able to witness our thoughts and emotions without judging them or identifying with them. We can also recognize the presence of awareness in other beings and in nature. This leads to a deeper connection with ourselves, with others, and with life itself. Ramana Maharishi. Ramana Maharishi was an Indian sage and Jivamukta liberated soul who taught self-inquiry as a principal means to remove ignorance and abide in self-awareness. He believed that the true nature of the self is pure consciousness, which is beyond the mind and body. According to him, the mind is a bundle of thoughts that arise from the ego, and it's only through self-inquiry that one can realize the true nature of the self. He also emphasizes the importance of devotion, bhakti, and surrender to the self. His teachings have been popularized in the West since the 1930s. Self-inquiry is a spiritual practice that was popularized by the Indian sage Ramana Maharishi. It involves asking oneself the question, who am I? And investigating the nature of the self.
According to Ramana Maharishi, the true nature of the self is pure consciousness, which is beyond the mind and body. By turning one's attention inward and focusing on the question, who am I? One can realize the true nature of the self and attain liberation. The practice of self-inquiry is considered to be a direct path to self-realization and is often used in conjunction with other spiritual practices such as meditation and devotion. Jiva Mukti. A Jiva Mukti is a term used in Indian philosophy to describe a person who has attained liberation while still alive. According to Advaita Vedanta, a school of Indian philosophy, the Jiva Mukti is one who has realized the true nature of the self and has become free from the cycle of birth and death. The Jiva Mukti is said to be in a state of constant bliss and peace and is no longer subject to the limitations of the mind and body. Be as you are. The teachings of Sri Ramana Maharishi. Be as you are. The teachings of Sri Rama Maharishi is a book by David Goodman that presents the teachings of the Indian sage Ramana Maharishi in a clear and accessible manner. The book is divided into three parts: biography, teachings, and reminiscence. The first part provides a brief biography of Ramana Maharishi, while the second part presents his teachings on self-inquiry, meditation, and other spiritual practices. The third part consists of reminiscence by some of his devotees, which provides insights into his life and teachings. The book is highly regarded by many spiritual seekers and is praised for its clarity and depth. 1. Self-inquiry. Ramana Maharishi taught self-inquiry as the principal means to remove ignorance and abide in self-awareness. Self-inquiry involves asking oneself the question, who am I? And investigating the nature of the self. By turning one's intentions inward and focusing on the question, who am I? One can realize the true nature of the self and attain liberation. Meditation. In addition to self-inquiry, Ramana Maharishi also recommended other spiritual practice such as meditation, yoga, and service to others as a means to purify the mind and prepare it for self-realization. Devotion. Ramana Maharishi emphasizes the importance of devotion and surrendering to the self. According to his teachings, devotion is a powerful means of purifying the mind and preparing it for self-realization. Surrendering. Ramana Maharishi taught that surrendering to the self is essential for spiritual progress. According to his teachings, surrender involves letting go of the ego and allowing oneself to be guided by a higher power. Non-dualism. Ramana Maharishi's teachings are based on non-dualism, which holds that there is no fundamental distinction between the individual self and the universal self. According to his teachings, the true nature of the self is pure consciousness, which is beyond the mind and body. Ramana Maharishi Meditation. Ramana Maharishi taught self-inquiry as the principal means to remove ignorance and abide in self-awareness. Self-inquiry involves asking oneself the question, who am I? And investigating the nature of the self. By turning one's attention inward and focusing on the question, who am I? One can realize the true nature of the self and attain liberation. In addition to self-inquiry, Ramana Maharishi also recommended other spiritual practices such as meditation, yoga, and service to others as a means to purify the mind and prepare it for self-realization. According to his teachings, meditation is a powerful tool for calming the mind and focusing one's attention on the self. He recommended various forms of meditation, including mantra repetition, breath awareness, and visualization. However, he emphasized that meditation should be practiced under the guidance of a qualified teacher. Ramana Maharishi, surrender. Surrender is a central theme in the teachings of Ramana Maharishi. According to his teaching, surrender involves letting go of the ego and allowing oneself to be guided by a higher power. He believed that the ego is the root cause of all suffering and that surrender is the key to spiritual progress. However, he also emphasizes that surrender is not a passive state, but an active one that requires effort and discipline. Ramana Maharishi taught there are three stages of surrender: surrender of actions, surrender of the fruit of actions, and surrender of oneself. Surrender of actions involve performing all actions as an offering to the divine without attachment to the results. Surrender of the fruit of actions involves accepting whatever comes as a result of one's actions, whether good or bad, as the will of the divine. Surrendering of oneself involves complete surrender to the divine, allowing oneself to be guided by a higher power in all aspects of life. According to Ramana Maharishi, surrender is not something that can be achieved through intellectual analysis or reasonings, but rather through direct experience. He believed that surrender is a natural state that arises when one realizes the true nature of the self and becomes free from the limitations of the mind and body. In this state, one experiences a sense of peace and contentment that is independent of external circumstances. In summary, surrender is the central theme in the teachings of Ramana Maharishi. It involves letting go of the ego and allowing oneself to be guided by a higher power. According to his teachers, there are three stages of surrender: surrender of actions, surrender of the fruit of actions, and surrender of oneself. Surrendering is not something that can be achieved through intellectual analysis or reassuring, but rather through direct experience. Ramana Maharishi, three stages of surrender. 1. Surrender of actions. This stage involves performing all actions as an offering to the divine, without attachment to the results. According to Ramana Maharishi, this stage is characterized by the realizations that all actions are performed by the divine, as the individual self is merely an instrument of the divine. In this stage, one becomes free from the bondage of karma and attains a sense of peace and contentment. Surrendering of the fruit of actions. This stage involves accepting whatever comes as the results of one's actions, whether good or bad, as the will of the divine. According to Ramana Maharishi, this stage is characterized by the realization that all results are determined by the divine and that the individual self has no control over them. In this stage, one becomes free from the fear of success or failure and attains a sense of equanimity. Surrendering of oneself. This stage involves complete surrender to the divine, allowing oneself to be guided by a higher power in all aspects of life. According to Ramana Maharishi, this stage is characterized by the realization that there is no separate self apart from the divine, and that all actions are performed by the divine through the individual self. In this stage, one becomes free from the illusion of separateness and attains a sense of oneness with all beings. It is important to note that these stages are not necessarily sequential and that one can move back and forth between them depending on one's level of spiritual development. However, according to Ramana Maharishi, complete surrender to the divine is essential for spiritual progress and is the key to attaining liberation. Eckhart Tolle and Ramana Maharishi share many common teachings. Eckhart Tolle and Ramana Maharishi share many common teachings. Both emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and living in the present moment. According to their teachings, the mind is the source of suffering, and that true happiness can only be found by transcending the mind and living in the present moment. They both teach that the true nature of the self is pure consciousness, which is beyond the mind and body. They also emphasizes the importance of surrender and devotion as means to spiritual progress. Eckhart Tolle has often cited Ramana Maharishi as one of his primary influences, and his teachings are often seen as a modern interpretation of Ramana Maharishi's teachings. Baba Ram Dass. Baba Ram Dass, born Richard Alpert, was an American spiritual teacher and author who was associated with the 1960s counterculture movement. He was a student of the Indian guru Nareen Karola Baba and became a devotee of Hinduism and Buddhism. Ram Dass' teachings focus on the importance of self-awareness, compassion, and service to others. He believed that the true nature of the self is pure consciousness, which is beyond the mind and body. He also emphasized the importance of meditation and devotion as a means to spiritual progress. Some of his notable books include Be Here Now, The Only Dance There Is, and Journey of Awakening. Be Here Now. By the same Be Here Now, Ram Dass means that we should focus our attention and awareness on the present moment and not on the past or the future. He believes that by being here now, we can experience the true nature of reality, which is beyond the illusion and attachments of the ego. He also thinks that by being here now, we can access a state of joy, peace, and love, which is our true essence. Being here now can have various benefits for an individual, such as reducing stress and anxiety by letting go of worries and fears about what has happened or what might happen, increasing happiness and satisfaction by appreciating and enjoying what is happening right now without comparing it to anything else or wishing for something different, enhancing creativity and insight by opening up to new possibilities and perspectives that emerge from the present moment without being limited by preconceptions or expectations, improving relationships and communication by being more attentive and empathetic to others without being distracted or judgmental, developing spirituality and wisdom by connecting with the source of all existence, which is present in every moment without being separated or identified with any form. Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is a spiritual path or practice within Hinduism that focuses on loving devotion towards any personal deity. The word bhakti comes from the root bha, which means to pray or to share. Bhakti Yoga is often called the yoga of love or the path of devotion. According to Nivya Textra, a well-known Bhakti Yoga teacher and author of Yoga and the Art of Mudras, Bhakti Yoga is a path of different practices that supports one's heart to express love in any and many different devotional ways. The practice of Bhakti Yoga involves cultivating a personal relationship with a deity through prayer, ritual, and chanting. The origin of Bhakti Yoga can be traced back to the Vedas, which are the older scriptures of Hinduism. The practice is later taught as its own path of yoga in the Bhagavad Gita, a poem found within India's great epic, the Mahabharata.
Being perfect versus being real. So many people strive for perfection. The wise man strives for being real. The Japanese have a great custom. When a precious teacup breaks, they put it together with real gold. The broken teacup has a blemish, yet what an incredible blemish it is. It is filled with gold. In this same way, our mistakes and blemishes can be so incredible for learning how to be real. We don't need to hide anything. Nature is real, not perfect. The universe is real, not perfect. A baseball player who hits the ball 1 out of 3 times is incredible. That means 2 out of 3 times they don't get on base. We take 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. This is how we grow on the journey in life. We must accept everything in our life. When we do, we are real. We are proud to have that precious scar. We don't have to put the dust under the carpet. Personally, I think our society would change for the better. We would learn at such a young age that we are competitors with each other. Survival of the fittest.
Yet being real stops that nonsense. We learn we're all in the same boat, sailing home together.
When I was young, I read the book Be Here Now by Baba Ramdas. Its central theme was to be in the moment. To be honest, I really didn't understand this concept. I just started my meditation practice and everything was so new. There was an entire universe to discover inside. Many moons later, I have a more personal experience of this. Imagine the difference of sitting on the beach watching the waves. Now imagine you are a surfer riding the waves. Big difference. To be in the moment, one needs to be engulfed with the wave of life. There's something keeping you alive. There is a power, a force of love filling the entire universe. One learns over time how subtle the experience is. Our human bodies are hardwired for this experience. Yet, we can't have an experience greater than what the nervous system can handle. This is why slow and easy wins the race. By meditating over time, you are slowly building up a vessel that can understand God. To be in the moment is when you close your eyes and the experience is just there. In the beginning of my journey, it took probably an hour to settle the mind. Now the mind is my friend. It can still be a brat, yet I am truly learning how to tame it. I think that by sitting on the beach, you can have a concept and at times glimpses of this experience. Letters get letters on. In the 60s, 50s, used drugs. We all get glimpses of this experience. The universe places signposts along the way. This is our true nature. In actuality, we don't have to do anything to be in this state. In this reality, we have forgotten our true nature. This is why all the great masters have said, discover your true nature. Can you imagine being inside at the center of a hurricane of the mind? In the center is absolute peace. In the center is a calm. In the center is serene. In the center is love and compassion for all. In the center are patience and kindness. Yet mankind exists in the winds of the hurricane. Our minds are restless. We may think that is not so. Yet close your eyes and watch your breath. It seems so easy, and it is. Yet tell me, the mind wanders here and there. You will never be able to 100% to completely tame your mind. But you can learn to tame your mind. You can learn to have your mind as your friend. In the midst of life, you can learn to be in the moment. This moment is kind. This moment is filled with love and compassion. This moment is patience. This is your true nature. Be in the moment.
The Journey of Awakening. The Journey of Awakening is a book by Ram Dass that explores the spiritual journey and the process of awakening. The book is divided into 3 parts. The journey begins, the journey continues, and the journey home. The first part provides an introduction to the spiritual journey and the challenges that one may face along the way. The second part focuses on the practices and techniques that can be used to cultivate spiritual awareness, including meditation,
yoga, and service to others. The third part explores the nature of enlightenment and the process of returning to the source. Throughout the book, Ram Dass emphasizes the importance of self-awareness, compassion, and service to others as means to a spiritual progress. He also draws on his own experiences and insights to provide guidance and inspiration for those on the spiritual path.
Paul Cohen. I really believe in synchronicity. This is from Wikipedia. Synchronicity is a concept first explained by analytical psychologist Carl Jung, which holds that events are meaningful coincidences if they occur with no causal relationship, yet seem to be meaningful related. This post of Paul got started by synchronicity of events. My friend Mark, see above, goes to Mexico and visits the pyramid at Tenochtitlan just outside Mexico City. This is his childhood dream. When he was 10 years old, he listened to the adventures at a lecture given by Paul Cohen's dad. Paul's family spent the summer in Mexico and Guatemala. Paul's dad was a doctor and did volunteer work for the summer. Mark never knew that Mexico had pyramids. So, Mark goes to Mexico and he posts his adventures on Facebook. I read the post and thought, whatever happened to Paul? We go back to first grade. I haven't spoken or heard about Paul for over 46 years. That's a long time. So here's where synchronicity starts kicking in. Mark posts on Facebook. Mary Lou Picard sees the post. Mary Lou Picard. Paul Cohen is in Colorado Springs, Mark. I spoke with him last summer. I'm sure he'd love to hear about your adventure and how his family inspired you. He's on Facebook, albeit very seldom. He does check it. Mark Blackburn. Mary, thanks so much. I found Paul's Facebook page, which you are correct. He hasn't used since 2015. Still, next time in Colorado Springs, I may try to look him up. Paul Cohen. Mark, so nice to read your posts. I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you. Wow, it was nice reading of your trip to Mexico. Very cool. Interesting how you had that intent for so many years. I think our visit to Mexico and Guatemala long ago led to a couple-year volunteer in Laos, Southeast Asia. Mark Blackburn. Paul, great to hear from you and know you are alive and presumably well. I vividly remember your father narrating that slideshow to this day. Traveling that far from home was not so common in those days. How long have you been in Colorado Springs? Paul? Yes, mostly well, thank you. Good to hear from you as well. Wow, this is an amazing story. So fun that you did that. I'm enjoying seeing your video posts. Looks like you had an incredible trip. Are you back in the United States now? And a friend of mine made that same climb this time of year, just 2 years ago. We really enjoyed it. I moved to the Springs about 25 years ago and like it. Are you in Seattle? Gretchen Gribble. Oh my God, Paul Cohen. Facebook has become old home week for me recently. I don't know if you remember me or not. It's fun hearing what my classmates are doing all these years later. Happy to hear tidbits about you. Mark Blackburn, Mark McClellan, and others. Yay Mariners, Ensign, and or Newport Harbor High School alumni. So then I send Paul a request. I see that Paul's on Facebook, so I sent him a Facebook friendly request. Paul responds, Richard, Paul Cohen has confirmed you that you're friends on Facebook. So yesterday, I was looking at Mark Blackburn's chapter. I decided to add Paul's picture. This is from the previous chapter. The classmate whose father gave the presentation was Paul Cohen. Does anyone remember what became of him? I suspect he went to Corona Del Mar, not Newport High School. I get out my Newport Harbor yearbook and snap this picture and insert it above. I send Paul a message. Hi Paul, it's been many moons since we've last seen each other. I was visiting some friends last summer in Colorado Springs. I tried to look you up. Anyway, maybe next time. Paul. First, Mary Picard. Mark, now my friend Rick. Haha, can't believe it. What's happening? Wow. Rick, earliest of friends. So then we get on the phone and start talking for a few hours. Now we haven't talked since high school, but we had instant communication. It's amazing to see how a series of events connect each one of us. If Mary Lou Picard didn't contact Paul, or Mark didn't do a post of his adventures on Facebook, I wouldn't have been in contact with Paul. I remember as a kid, I was fascinated by Paul's house. It was a Japanese-style house. From what I remember, they had a courtyard with the rooms coming off from it. Instead of having ordinary doors, they had soji doors. Now as a kid, I loved anything from the Far East. I loved things outside of the box. Paul's house was stuck in a neighborhood with all standard houses of the time. The front of the house was standard, but nobody knew the jewel inside. Paul's dad was a doctor. I saw him a few times when I was a kid. Paul's dad was my brother's David primary doctor. Back then, it wasn't unusual for a doctor treating a patient smoking a cigar. Paul and I were great friends in elementary school. I learned over the phone that Paul had been to about the same number of countries that I have been, around 35. He spent 2 years in Laos doing voluntary work. Paul tried to go to India. He had the plane tickets, but unfortunately the Bhopal gas tragedy happened in India. When Paul tried to get a visa, he was denied. Paul was a lawyer at the time. The Indian government wouldn't give him a visa. They thought he was going to India to work on the Bhopal gas tragedy. Paul tried to tell him he was going just as a tourist, but they wouldn't listen. It's a small world. Paul's mom got remarried. Her husband was a member of the Beak family from Newport Beach. I went to junior high school with his niece, Carol. This is the story from the Balboa Island Museum about the Beak family. In 1919, Joseph Allen Beak obtained the rights from the city of Newport Beach to provide a ferry service across the Newport Harbor between Balboa Island and the Balboa Peninsula. Before starting the ferry service, Beak owned the Ark. The Ark consisted of a giant rowboat with a small engine, which Beak used as the first ferry vessel. The Ark carried oars in the event of engine failure. There was no regular scheduled service, and customers telephoned Beak when they needed a ride across the harbor. In 1919, Beak charged a nickel, 5 cents per person. 3 years after commencing operation, Beak built the Fat Ferry. This vessel held 20 passengers. Beak later built a small one, a car barge where the Fat Ferry pushed cross in front of it. In the 1950s, Beek built 3 double-ended wooden boats for his ferry service: the Admiral, the Commandeer, and the Captain. These 2 boats are still in service and have transported over 2 million persons. Each ferry holds 3 cars and 75 people. As of 2007, the Beeks charge $1 per adult, $2 per vehicle, and 50 cents for children ages 5 through 11, $1.25 for adults on bikes, 75 cents for children on bikes, and $1.50 for motorcycles. Children under the age of 5 are free. The ferry boat needs constant maintenance, but this does not usually interrupt the ferry service. For 2 weeks in 2008, the ferry service shut down for an extended period for the first time in 50 years to rebuild the automobile ramps leading to the boats. Currently, Beek's 3 sons run the business and has been the family for close to 100 years. Paul tells me his stepdad is an incredible character. He is in his 90s. He's driven the same Volkswagen since the 70s. Who knows how many miles he has traveled on it? Paul says he has a unique ability for photographic memory. Here's a definition of photographic memory: the ability to remember information or visual images in great detail. He also loves computers. He was involved in the early days when computer science was still in its infancy. I would love to meet him someday. He seems like the character I would love to be around. Paul says he loves to travel on the Amtrak train between Los Angeles and San Francisco. His favorite part is when the train would pass through the Hollister Ranch. Paul said each time he would reflect that the Fletcher brothers spent an incredible amount of time there during high school. Paul went to the Fletcher School in Ojai for 2 years. Paul met the family that sold their ranch to the Macro Corporation in the 60s. I wonder how the family that sold the ranch feels today. For a surfer, it'd be like selling the keys to heaven. Paul said he would tell stories to his kids about my brother and I. Paul remembers a time in 5th grade where John and I would switch classes. Paul remembers that John and I would switch shirts and then go to each other's class. All the students knew my brother and I were playing a joke. At some point in time, the entire class would start laughing. Everyone except for the teacher was on in this joke. The teacher would wonder, what's going on? Eventually the teacher would catch on and we would all laugh. These were simple times. I don't know if today the school system would appreciate this. I knew Paul's brother's Nat in high school. My brother and I were on the same track team and cross-country team in high school. Nat was best friends with Bruce Charles, a great neighbor of ours. I remember in either 5th or 6th grade, they dressed up as surfers and carried a surfboard for Halloween. I was impressed. I distinctly remember that I said, someday I'm going to be a surfer. During my phone conversations with Paul, he mentioned that with my travels to India and my love for meditation, did I ever hear about his second cousin? He was somewhat of a black sheep in the family. His name was Balaram Das, formerly known as Richard Albert. Did I know Ram Das? During my late teens and early 20s, Ram Das was famous in the meditation community. Richard Albert was a young psychologist during the 60s. He, along with Timothy Leary, began to explore the effects of psychotropic substances on the mind. Both of them worked at Harvard University. They began to do clinical studies on the effects of LSD and psilocybin. At that time, they weren't illegal in the country. At some point, they got fired for doing the research. They had graduate students who actively participated in their research. But one time, they had an undergraduate student Consequently, they were fired. Timothy Leary's famous slogan was, "Tune in, turn on, drop out." Ram Dass wrote the book, Be Here Now, a popular book during the 60s and 70s. Today, it's considered a modern spiritual classic. In fact, I read this book at Ananda in Nevada City before I went on my journey. To be honest, at that time, I really didn't understand the book. Books like these take practical experience to understand and to incorporate these ideas in the book. Ram Dass started using drugs and meditated for the rest of his life. He used to say that drugs were training wheels. At some point, you don't need them anymore. I tried LSD once, and never again. The state of meditation brings one into our natural state, where we don't need anything artificial to open the door within. So I was completely surprised when Paul told me his second cousin was Ram Dass. I saw him speak in Santa Fe, New Mexico during the 70s. I had been impressed by his work. He had tremendous influence in the population at large. He helped to bring meditation to be common among our society. During the 70s, it was considered you were on the fringe of society if you meditated. You were strange. Nowadays, yoga is mainstream. You can practice it almost everywhere. Synchronicity is so common, yet most of the time we don't see it. Signposts are everywhere, yet we don't have eyes to see. Thanks, Paul, for being my lifelong friend. I'm so happy that we are connected again. We are all on an incredible journey of life.
The eagle is frightened by death because eagle is part of the incarnation and ends with it. That's why we learn to identify with our soul, as the soul continues after death. With its soul, death is just another movement. Watch how your mind judges. Judgment comes in part out of our own fear. You judge other people because you're not comfortable in your own being. By judging, you find out where you stand in relation to other people. The judging mind is very divisive. It separates. Separation closes your heart. If you close your heart to someone, you're perpetuating your suffering and theirs. Shifting out of judgment means learning to appreciate your predicament and their predicament with an open heart instead of judging. Then you can allow yourself and others to just be without separation. True compassion arises out of the plane of consciousness where I am you. We are all just walking each other home. Souls love. That's what souls do. Egos don't, but souls do. Become a soul. Look around, and you'll be amazed. All the beings around you are souls. Be one. See one. When many people have this heart connection, then we will know that we are all one. We human beings, all over the planet, we will be one. One love. And don't leave out the animals and trees and clouds and galaxies. It's all one. It's one energy. Our energy is more deeply involved in life and yet less attracted to it. The game is not about becoming somebody. It's about becoming nobody. If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. When someone we love dies, we get so busy mourning what died that we ignore what didn't. Ask yourself, where am I? Answer, here. Ask yourself, what time is it? Answer, now. Say it until you can hear it. All you can do for another person is to be in an environment in which if they wanted to come up for air, they could. The intellect is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. Intellect is the power tool of our separateness. The intuitive, compassionate heart is the doorway to our unity. The sooner one develops compassion in this journey, the better. Compassion lets us appreciate that each individual is doing what he or she must do, and that there is no reason to judge another person or yourself. You merely do what you do to further your own awakening. When you're completely identified with your thinking mind, you are totally separate from everything else in the universe. After meditating for some years, I began to see the patterns of my own behavior. As you quiet your mind, you become to see the nature of your own resistance more clearly, struggles, inner dialogues, the way in which you procrastinate and develop passive resistance against life. As you cultivate the witness, things change. You don't have to change things. Things just change. Suffering lets us see where our attachments are, and that helps us get free. The most exquisite paradox: as soon as you give it all up, you can have it all. As long as you want power, you can't have it. The minute you don't want power, you'll have more than you ever dreamed possible. The heart surrenders everything to the moment. The mind judges and holds back. In most of human relationships, we spend much of our time reassuring one another that our costumes of identity are on straight. When we see the beloved in each person, it's like walking through a garden, watching flowers bloom all around us. I would like my life to be a statement of love and compassion, and when it isn't, that's where my work lies. As long as you have certain desires about how it ought to be, you can't see how it is. Everything changes once we identify with being the witness to the story instead of the actor in it. The universe is made up of experiences that are designed to burn out your attachment, your clinging to pleasure, to pain, to fear, to all of it. And as long as there's a place where you're vulnerable, the universe will find a way to confront you with it. It's very hard to grow because it's difficult to let go of the models of ourself in which we invested so heavily. Each person tells you who they think they are and who they think you are.